guys, welcome to this episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. So I've been looking at a lot of watches lately, mostly because I have money to burn and I don't really have anything on my list that I want to buy right now. Dangerous combination if you're a watch collector. But this topic kind of popped in my head as I've been looking around because I've really been thinking about what makes up value for money for me when it comes to buying a watch. And I thought it'd be an interesting discussion topic. This one also might be super helpful for you newer watch collectors out there that are a little bit newer to the game that might not know what to look for when it comes to determining how good of a price that you're getting on a watch or value for money for a watch. And for you veteran collectors that have been doing this for a long time, I would actually love to hear your input because this is where I get to learn a little bit from you guys as well. So let me know down in the comments below if you agree with some of the points I'm making here, disagree, and what your thoughts are when it comes to value for money when looking to purchase a wristwatch. Before we get into the discussion, quick wristwatch check. I am wearing my Neckin Renegade. I'm wearing them on this blue canvas Haveston strap. I just got these Haveston straps a couple weeks ago. I've really been enjoying them so far. I'm sure you'll see a review of them on the channel at some point. And if you wanted to check out my review of the Renegade, I did post that a couple weeks ago, and I'll leave a card up here above for you guys to check out as well. So let's talk about value for money. This is a really subjective topic. Also, again, it's going to vary wildly from person to person in terms of what you look for and how you weigh their importance. And the stuff I'm going to talk about here is really in no particular order, but it's just, I guess I'll talk about how heavily I weigh them as we go through the discussion. So the first thing that I look at whenever I'm buying any watch is the resale value. Now, this is very much going to differ whether you're buying a new watch or a used watch from somebody for sure. It also is going to depend on what type of buy you are. I'm not going to say that I go into buying any watch with the knowledge that I'm going to sell it one day, but at the same time, it's kind of a realistic expectation, I guess you can say, that I may end up flipping several watches that I buy. Part of the reason is because of this channel. I probably am going to be someone that buys more watches than the average watch collector, just because it helps out this channel quite a bit as well. And some of the reason too is because you never know with watches anymore, especially in this day and age where a lot of sales, probably most sales I would say, are being done online. When you're only seeing renders of a watch or pictures of a watch, and you don't actually get to hold or experience the watch before you buy it, you don't know if you're going to bond with it right away. You don't know if it's going to be something that you want to keep in your collection long term. And again, we're not talking about high-end luxury watches, though this conversation can certainly apply towards that as well. But that's why resale value is something that I always check out on any watch that I buy. Now, you can of course do this by going to like eBay, seeing what sold ones have gone for recently, going to the Reddit Watch Exchange or the Watch You Seek forums and typing in, a search for the watch and again, seeing what prices they've sold for. And what I'm looking for, what my expectations are going to be different whether it's a new watch or a used watch that I'm buying. So here's the thing with new watches, and if you're a newer collector, it's important that you understand this from the jump. 99.99% of watches that are sold are going to depreciate in value over time. And if you're talking about micro brand watches, which is primarily what I've been buying lately, you can probably take that 99.9999% of watches that are sold are going to depreciate in value over time. In the watch industry, it's just a rare thing for the value of a watch to increase as time goes along, especially in the short term. If you're talking on a longer stretch, a longer scale, maybe you see that more, but there are only a handful of brands that you can reliably count on to kind of retain the same value that you purchased the watch for or even grow. Most watches are going to drop. So for me, I'm definitely looking at, hey, if in case I don't jive with this watch or in case I move it on one day, what am I looking to sell this for? And in my mind, I think a good return on investment for a new watch is if you can flip it for anywhere between 60 to 70% of what you paid for it, I think you're in pretty good shape. This is actually one area where micro brands actually have a small advantage over larger brands because larger brands have the downside of being sold on the gray market, which is going to undercut their value tremendously out of the gate. Problem is, if you watch the sales at retail for $1,000, but gray market sellers are going to sell it for $600, if you're selling it used, you're not going to be able to sell it for probably more than $500 at the end of that, because if someone can go to a gray market seller and buy it brand new for $600, it's going to be very difficult for you to sell it at that same price, even if you can provide, hey, it's still covered under manufacturer's warranty. Some people might find that important. I would think most people are going to be looking for the best deal. So anything that you can get between 60 and 70% return on from a new watch, I think that's excellent. Realistically, you're probably looking more at 40 to 50% in a lot of cases. So again, that's something you have to know going in, and that's why I tend to do a little bit more diligence when I'm buying a new watch over a used watch. Now with used watches, I tend to be a very frugal shopper when it comes to buying a used watch. I want to buy a used watch for the absolute lowest price that I possibly can, for the lowest risk price that I possibly can. My goal when I'm buying a used watch is if I have to flip that watch down the road, I'd love to be able to flip it for at least what I paid for it. If I can make a profit, then I'm lucky, but I at least want to flip it for what I paid for it, or maybe take like a 10% hit at most. So used watches, I tend to be much more patient with. I tend to look around a little bit more. I tend not to jump on them quite as quickly, just because I want to find the best deal that I possibly can. And I've been pretty lucky with some watches that I bought so far, in terms of being able to get a good deal on them and being able to sell them for the price that I paid for them at least. But so I think used, you want to be a little bit more frugal. I think when you buy a new watch, you want to be a little bit more sure in your purchasing. So the next big thing is the brand and the heritage that that brand carries with it. And this is going to be one of the most subjective aspects of this process, I think, that you'll find for people. Because some people think that this is the most important thing when you're buying a new watch. And some people, and I'm one of them, don't tend to value this as heavily. I think that you can look at brand history and you can look at brand heritage as a reasonable predictor of performance, but I don't know if it's a great indicator of value. And the reason why is there's a ton of brands coming out nowadays, especially, again, micro brands, entry-level Swiss brands, that do provide a lot of watch at a much more reasonable price than some of your bigger brands out there, like Rolex, like Omega, like IWC. Brands like that where the name itself carries a premium might not have the best value. Now, I'm not going to sit here and suggest that, Rolexes aren't worth the money. I mean, you can make the argument that they're not worth the prices that they're going for right now. Rolex does a lot of stuff that, definitely gets that value in them. The fact that they put them through a lot of strenuous testing, the fact that they're all hand assembled, at their factory, the fact that every watch that they sell takes at least a year to work through the Rolex factory to make sure that they are to, utmost specifications. The fact that they have in-house movements. There's a lot of things that Rolex offers that does provide value, but when you still look at the fact that a ceramic Rolex Submariner costs $9,500 or whatever it cost, and 10 years ago it cost like $5,500, I'm not sure that they're not doing a heck of a lot more with those watches to justify that $4,000 price increase. And that to me is why brand and heritage is not something that you can really lean on too heavily for value in my mind. I think that you can still get that peace of mind if you're smart in your research. Look at the company, look at their website, look at their process. Also, a lot of the guys that run these microbrand companies are on Instagram just with their personal profiles. Like if you check out their profiles and see what watches they post, what watches they like, chances are you can get a pretty good idea for the kind of product that they're going to produce, because most guys that start a watch microbrand are watch lovers, and they're going to lean on their experiences as a watch collector to design the best watch they possibly can. And look, if that means you don't take a gamble on a new brand until they have their feet under them, until they've proven that they can make a quality product, I think that's a totally fair and also rational way to do it. But for me, the brand, the heritage of the brand, not that big of a deal when I'm looking into a watch, and oftentimes can actually lower the value of the watch when you're looking at a price to what you're getting ratio. The watch movement is where most folks are going to point to when it comes to value for money. But for me, I use movements to actually kind of mentally set a price range of where I would expect a watch that has that movement to be in terms of pricing. So for example, if I see a watch that comes along that has like a Seiko NH35, for example, right? I can expect that watch to cost anywhere between $200 to, let's just say, $600 or $700 based on other features that the watch comes in. But because I know the movement, because I'm familiar with the movement, and I generally know how much the movement costs, I kind of can generally suss out where that watch is going to be priced, because of course the movement often tends to be one of the more expensive aspects of a watch. Likewise, if I see a watch that has a, Sellita SW200, for example, or an ETA 2824, I can also set a price range in my head of, okay, this watch is should probably cost anywhere between X and Y. And that way, if that watch comes in, under X, under that first value, you can look at that and say, hey, there might be some really good value for money to be had there. And likewise, if the watch costs more than Y, costs more than the higher value than I would expect the watch to come in as, then there better be some other really compelling things to get me to look at that brand to bring that value back to me, because I'm not seeing it with the movement. So again, watch movements, very important. And for some people, like they will have a hard line on these as well. Like there are some folks that will look at Miyota 9015 movement, for example, and they say, there's no way that I would pay more than $500 for a watch that has a Miyota 9015 in it. And that's, that's certainly a way to do it. I don't necessarily agree with going in with that specific aspect. And like I said, I generally use them as a good indicator of if a price is high or low for a specific watch, as a good kind of like baseline, I guess you could say. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this is the thing that for me in this first year plus of collecting, the aspect that I wouldn't have expected to probably be the most important to me, but has definitely matured the most for me in my eyes, and that is finishing and attention to detail that watches carry. So when I'm looking at two similar watches that are in a similar price tier, finishing is where it kind of separates the great from the good in my mind. And when we talk about finishing, we're talking about things like, what is the level of, polish or brush work on the case, looking at, things like the design of the lugs, for example, kind of getting down deep with the dial, looking at the hands, looking at the quality of the hands and how they're cut and finished, looking at how like a dial on a watch is laid out and designed, things of that nature, to me kind of all encompass this finishing category. This is one of the reasons, so like I talk about Christopher Ward as a brand that provides really great value, and I point to the Christopher Ward C65 Trident diver as a great example of this, because when you compare this watch to other watches that are in its similar price range, the C65 just cannot be beat. When you look at the level of detail that you see in the design of the case, my C60 Trident GMT, same way. You have this, guilloche wave pattern that runs across the dial. You have really smart looking hands that lend itself really well to the watch design. Things of that nature put it in a class above other watches that you'll see in that $7,000 to $1,000 price range. And so again, that's why I talk about Chris Ward as a company that offers really great value for money. And TH is kind of the same way. Like the level of detail and finishing that they put on their watches is a cut above than what you would see from a lot of micro brands that are going to be in that price range, and I think justifies the price tag that they put on their watches. It's really funny what you learn about a watch once you do get a chance to spend some time with it, get it in your hands, and put it under a loupe or put it, under heavy magnification and really dig down and look at the details. For some watches, it shows you some stuff that you might not want to see, but for a lot of watches, it can show you things about the watch that you would have never seen from an internet render, or maybe not even necessarily seen with your naked eye, just looking at it at a regular height or a regular distance. So for me nowadays, finishing is definitely the thing that I pay the most attention to. For me, it's probably the biggest factor that I really do look at when determining the value of a watch. And you can't take that's the other thing with this conversation too, is you can't take any one of these things by themselves and just use that one thing to determine if a watch is a good value. You have to look at them combined together. But for me, like I said, I put a lot of weight on the finishing and the detail that a watch has. And for me, that was something that a year ago I would not have been able to do or known to pay attention for. It's arguably one of the most important lessons that I've learned in this first year of collecting, and I think it's a good bit of advice and a good thing to look out for, again, if you are a newer collector as well. Again, I would love to hear from you guys, especially you veteran collectors, some of the things that you look for to determine if a watch is good value for money. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. If you found it informative, do me a favor, click that thumbs up button and leave a like. If you're new to the channel, thanks for checking it out. Click the red subscribe button and ring the bell icon so that you never miss a new episode that I post. And if you use Instagram and you want to follow me there, all you have to do is seek out @buddingwatchenthusiast and click that follow button. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you all the next time.